For those who have not been keeping up, over the last few days there's been this huge controversy over a quote from Marvel, which claims that the reason the company's sales have been going down is over diversity. Obviously, a lot of people are going to complain about that. They're going to say, oh, you just hate diversity, you cis white male, and you know, the typical bullshit arguments the SJWs come out with. But I'm not here to be reactionary and just jump on any kind of bandwagon from either side. I'm here to look at this objectively. Now, full disclosure, I've not read any Marvel comics in quite a while, none of the new ones anyway. So this is from the perspective of a Marvel fan who is also currently an outsider. Some of these could very well be good, it's entirely possible, but here are my thoughts based on what I have seen. I think there are two major issues that are causing Marvel sales to go down. One is, of course, the storylines. For example, the big event comic from last year, which I think actually bled over into this year as well, was Civil War 2. The thing with Civil War is people generally liked it at the time, a decade ago, and there's obviously potential in the concept, which is why it was used as the basis for the film Captain America Civil War, which honestly handled the material a lot better. Now, Civil War 2, I'm not sure if it exists more to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Civil War, or to take advantage of the success of the movie Captain America Civil War. The problem is, well, people generally don't look back on the original Civil War story very positively. Because people generally look back on it and go, yeah, it was kind of shit. There was a lot wrong with it. Like Linkara did this great takedown of it, 15 things that are wrong with Civil War. Like, you should definitely watch that, it brings up a lot of good points. Now, this is a problem that a lot of superhero versus superhero stories have, and I brought this up a lot in my big Injustice critique, which you should also watch because I think that was pretty good, is that a lot of the time the characters fight just because the story needs them to and not because it makes logical sense. You know, these characters have been friends for typically about 15 years. Real friends don't just resort to beating the shit out of each other when they have a disagreement. And when this story is Civil War 2, a sequel story to the original Civil War, or at least taking place in the same universe as the original afterwards, with the same basic idea of the characters being split into two sides, you'd think someone would say, you know guys, maybe we shouldn't do this because, you know, last time Goliath got killed and, you know, Captain America died, and also it led to the rise of Norman Osborn as the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., so maybe we shouldn't do this time, you know? Maybe? No one says that. No one has any fucking brain cells. And then there's the fact the story itself also has a lot of discontinuity with the rest of the Marvel universe. You know, Bruce Banner isn't the Hulk anymore. The Hulk was absorbed by Amadeus Cho. He is the Hulk. But the story of Civil War 2 still insists that Bruce Banner will become the Hulk and will go on a rampage and everyone's going to be in danger, so he needs to be killed. That is a problem. And Civil War 2 not only was a story no one liked, it also had two other major issues. One, it was dragged out way longer than it should have been because of all these delays. And also that, well, a lot of the people who are going to be watching the films of Phase 3 don't know who some of these characters are. In particular, we have a movie of Captain Marvel coming up next year. Captain Marvel is a very popular character in the comics, but mainstream audiences don't know who she is. So you have a story in the comics in which she's a major player, but they turned her into the villain. Much like the original Civil War, in which Iron Man was the unfortunate victim of horrendous character assassination, Carol is the one who suffers that here. Marvel has an opportunity to give people a reason to care when Carol gets her own movie, and they completely fucked her over. That's not fair to fans of Carol, and I'm one of them. I was a big fan of her second solo book. That stuff was great. Unfortunately, around the same time as Civil War 1, but Marvel has this big opportunity to really sell people on Captain Marvel, and they completely fucked it up. Now, that's just one major issue with the comics at the minute. The other one is, I think, probably more prevalent, because this one is a much more surface level thing, something you can see straight away. You know, you look at a cover, you can't really tell the quality of the story from the cover, but you can tell the sort of stuff that's going to happen in it and the kind of characters that are going to be in it, and that's where people take issue. The big issue really is, it's not diversity, it's forced diversity. It's when you're going in and taking these beloved characters and replacing them with new people in those roles. Really, their tokenism kind of comes off as, well, token. Not all of them, don't get me wrong, some of them work. Currently in the comics, Steve Rogers, not being Captain America, but I think he is Captain America at the same time as the other Captain America. It's a whole mess. But the current main Captain America is Sam Wilson, the Falcon, Captain America's protege since the 70s. So Sam Wilson succeeding Steve Rogers as Captain America makes as much sense as when Bucky Barnes succeeded Cap, or when Dick Grayson took over as Batman. It's a logical continuation. So even if the entire concept was, let's replace Steve Rogers with some token minority, at the very least someone looked at it and said, well, Cap has a black protege, it would make sense story-wise, and they went with it. I mean, as far as I can tell, the comic was basically just a rip-off of Batman Beyond, but at the very least, this one is an idea that makes sense in universe. And in addition to that, Sam Wilson as Captain America brings over his Falcon wings, which adds something new to the way Captain America fights because he can fly. So right there, you have a character that makes logical sense, and he brings something new to the table. Whatever the reason for doing this, whether it was for the sake of the story or for the sake of diversity, they handled it well. Let's take another example. Marvel tried for years to make a Captain Marvel who would stick, it's just that it never really worked. But then someone hit on the idea, well, people really like Ms. Marvel, so let's make her Captain Marvel. And that works out. People like Carol, so she is now Captain Marvel. And that freed up the Ms. Marvel name, allowing them to create a new character, Kamala Khan. Kamala Khan is also a very popular character. She has unique and interesting powers that makes her distinct from Carol. She has an interesting characterization as a superhero fangirl, which you don't really see so much, but it makes a lot of sense because superheroes in universe are basically celebrities. So having fan sites and fan art and fan fiction and people who are big fanboys and fangirls of these people makes a lot of sense. And that's something Kamala brings to the table that I don't think Marvel's ever really had before. And the way she is a minority is that she is a Muslim. Her parents are very conservative Muslims, but Kamala is much more free-spirited, having been born and raised in America. She kind of embraces American ideals much more than the rest of her family, and that gives her an interesting dynamic with her family, and also provides plenty of interesting setups for storytelling. So Kamala Khan is another successful example. Let's look at another. Thor. This is probably the most infamous and divisive decision that Marvel has made in the last maybe 10 years. Thor has been replaced by a woman. That's the basic setup. And the way they went about doing it is completely stupid. So Nick Fury whispered something into Thor's ear that made him unworthy of wielding the hammer. That's not how the hammer works. It's not about whether or not you think you are worthy, it's whether the hammer deems you worthy. Are we supposed to assume that Thor learned something that he's not supposed to know? Something that inherently makes him unworthy? What? What could it be? I don't know if they've actually revealed what that is, but just the concept there is stupid. And so that led to the setup of a new Thor, someone else who would take up the hammer and become Thor. Now this was presented as a mystery. Who is the female Thor? The problem with that is, well, it kind of meant that the female Thor didn't really have much in terms of character until her identity was revealed. So up until then, it really was just a female Thor. Some people get really triggered by the phrasing female Thor, but this is like the Ghostbusters reboot. It just has the same name, and the biggest distinguishing feature is the gender of the main characters. So what else are you supposed to call it? You have original Thor, new Thor, male Thor, female Thor, Thor and female Thor. Like, no one's going to call the new one Thor and the other one the original Thor or the old Thor, because he is literally Thor. He's not just named after the God of Thunder, he is the God of Thunder. And that's one of the reasons I take issue with this. She should have had a different name. She didn't need to be called Thor, nor should she have been. Just because he's using Thor's hammer doesn't mean she needs to go by that name. She could have taken a different name, like even if she'd just gone by Mjolnir, that would have been fine. But this is like if Sam Wilson had succeeded Steve Rogers as Steve Rogers. That's stupid. That's horrendously stupid. So the female Thor, there was this whole mystery about who it could be. Now Thor had a list. He was like, who could it be? Here's the likely candidates. Any of those candidates would have been a better choice. Now he was thinking, maybe it's Lady Sif, maybe it's even my mother. Then it turns out, no, it's Jane Foster. Of all people, you went with Jane friggin' Foster? Like, surely it would have made more sense to go with someone who has combat experience, perhaps someone who already has their own unique style, and they could implement Mjolnir into that to make some kind of new fighting style. For example, Lady Sif. People really like Lady Sif in the movies. I get the feeling that a lot of this whole replacing the original characters is so that when they eventually get around to the point where the actors in the movies cost too much to bring back, like Robert Downey Jr. cost so much money to bring back every time, replacing Tony Stark with someone else so that that character can be brought in as Iron Man in the movies, you can see where that makes logical sense. So that it's not just something they're pulling out their ass in the movies, it's already established in the comics, so it's okay, you know? So from that perspective, it makes sense to have Sif do that. I mean, most people generally don't really like Natalie Portman all that much. She's not even back in Thor 3. So why would you pick Jane Foster? Did anyone really plan to have Natalie Portman start in a Thor film as the main character? Probably not. Now, if you'd gone with Sif, people love her actress, and she could have had something cool. She could have wielded her sword and Mjolnir, or perhaps perhaps combine Mjolnir with her sword through some magical enchantment, creating a new unique take on Mjolnir. Effectively Mjolnir as the hilt and pommel of the sword, with the blade coming out the top, and it's a lightning sword. That could have been a cool take on the character. Valkyrie wields a spear. She could have combined that with Mjolnir to either be a spear and hammer, or a war hammer. So you could do some really interesting ideas with this, but it's just Jane Foster. She brings nothing new and interesting to the table in the way that these other characters could have. And I remember this hilariously cringy article that was written about how a certain scene in one of the female Thor comics was a huge victory for feminism, when it really wasn't. It was pathetic. Basically what happens is female Thor goes up against the Absorbing Man, and his response to seeing this new female Thor is, and I quote, "Damn feminists are ruining everything. Could you be more blatant with the straw man you are creating? This is not any kind of nuanced, take that at the patriarchy. No. This is blatant, it is pandering, and it is pathetic. This is so on the nose that I cannot believe this was allowed to go to print. It's astounding. He has no reason to assume she's a feminist. She's a woman. That has fuck all to do with being a feminist. If his response was, oh, you're a new Thor, you don't know what you're doing, you're new on the block, I've been at this for 10, 15 years and you're a newbie, you can't top me, that would be fine. That's the way the scenario should have gone. But they went for a lowest common denominator approach that is sad. I feel sorry for anyone who bought this comic and was subjected to this utter tripe. And then his wife, she's his accomplice, no joke, she comes out, knocks him out, and then decides to surrender because she's not going to fight the female Thor because she respects what she's doing. Yeah, she respects this great thing she's doing for feminism. And then, of course, Thor fucking knocks her out with the hammer to the face. It's always nice when the protagonist is more of a raving cunt than the villains. You know, I also wonder if the writer requested to the artist in the script that when this character is shown from behind that her arse is basically flat. Like, there's no crack there. She's wearing a skin-tight outfit and it's not there. Now, if you wanted to avoid male gaze pandering or some bullshit, then why show it from this angle? You may as well have just done this from a higher angle or with something obscuring the camera. It's amazing how many horrendously bad things there are in just this one scene that lasts about 6-7 pages. Like, do you see why people have a problem with this? Do you get it now? Are you really that blind that you can't see it? Why people have a problem with the current direction Marvel is going with this shit? And let's go a little further into the Absorbing Man's portrayal here, because he basically assumes this character is a feminist because she's a woman. Basically what they're trying to say is that this man has a problem with a female Thor because she is a woman. That's ultimately what they're trying to say is at the core of his attitude here. This is the Marvel Universe. It's been roughly 15 years in universe since the Fantastic Four debuted. The Fantastic Four, of whom, I remind you, the most powerful member is the Invisible Woman. You have the X-Men, where among the most powerful members are Jean Grey, one of the most powerful entities in the entire Marvel Universe, and also Storm, and Emma Frost, and Psylocke. And then you have the Avengers, which include Captain Marvel, the Scarlet Witch, another of the most powerful entities in the Marvel Universe. And there are tons of others, very famous, very powerful women in this universe. She-Hulk. Fucking She-Hulk exists. When you've been alive in this universe for the last 15 years and seen these very powerful superheroes, many of the most powerful of whom are women, who would honestly look at a female Thor and say, haha, you're a girl, lol. That's fucking stupid. This is a great victory for feminism. No, you're putting down a straw man. And all they needed to do to make this work is simply say, haha, you're new, you can't beat me. That's all it would take. A slight tweak to make it something that makes sense in universe, but no, because the writer of this thing had an agenda. They wanted to push feminism as this great and incredible thing, women as a great and incredible thing, and push the idea that misogyny could honestly continue to exist in the Marvel Universe. And it's stuff like that. It's these horrendous decisions, these people who come in, not to tell an interesting story about what Jane Foster would be like if she succeeded Thor as Thor. No, these people come in with an agenda to push. And that's what's off-putting to so many fans. fans. Because people don't want to read Marvel comics to read an ultra-feminist version of Thor. They want Thor. They want a dude with a big hammer who hits things, fires lightning at people, and saves the day. When you look at the way they've approached Captain America and Ms. Marvel, they are interesting characters with interesting story setups. And in case of Sam, he is already an established character with his own established fan base. Especially in the wake of the movies where he's one of the best characters, and you could honestly see him becoming Captain America in a later sequel. You know, maybe Captain America 4. Sam Wilson is Captain America, directed by Chris Evans, who wants to direct movies. There you go, you have a golden opportunity that maybe they're building up towards. Then you look at ideas like the female Thor, and it's pathetic. It says a lot that even Amadeus Cho becoming the Hulk, so that we have this version of the Hulk who is effectively the Professor persona from the 90s if he was a totally radical teenager. Even that has more potential for good stories, and from what I've seen is handled a lot better than this SJW pandering bullshit. And because the female Thor is ultimately the most infamous, the most pronounced example of any of this, it kind of paints this broad picture that the whole Marvel universe is now just pandering to SJWs and replacing all the established beloved characters with completely new ones. And honestly, that's not really fair on those characters. Why did this new Iron Man character need to replace Iron Man? Why couldn't she just be her own character with her own suit, her own identity, all that stuff? Maybe even starring in her own comic separate from Iron Man. Why did Amadeus Cho need to become the Hulk? Why not just give a spin-off to one of the other many Hulks they currently have? Why did you have to have a woman replace Thor? Why not just give Sif or Valkyrie, or maybe both together, their own book? Rather than creating all these new characters to replace the old ones, take the characters you already have and push them. Take established, popular characters that people want to see more of, and give them a greater share of the spotlight instead of just taking all the old guys and getting rid of them. I mean, even if you disagree, even if you think this is all just this great push for diversity and equality, even if you think it's all a very positive thing, you have to at least see where the critics are coming from. Because no matter what the real thought process is behind all this, whether it really is just about creating cool new characters for people to like, it can be kind of hard to see it that way because they're not getting their own real shot as characters. I mean, after Secret Wars, they brought Miles Morales, the Ultimate Spider-Man, into the main universe. He still goes by Spider-Man. Peter Parker is also still Spider-Man. That feels unfair to Miles because he's now sharing the identity with Peter Parker. Why not give Miles an entirely new identity? I'm sure a lot of these characters either are well written or have the potential to be well written. It's just a lot of it comes off as very forced. So even if, say, Sam Wilson makes sense as Captain America, a lot of people will see it painted all with the same brush. Oh, it's Captain America but a black man. Oh, it's Ms. Marvel but a Muslim. Oh, it's Iron Man as a black teenage girl. Actually, no, that one actually is legitimate. Why was this one necessary? I mean, granted, she doesn't actually go by the name Iron Man, but she does take over the Iron Man book. Why? It's a new character with her own identity based on Iron Man, but she isn't called Iron Man, but she takes over the Iron Man book. Can someone explain the logic on that one to me? Because I don't get it. Ultimately, what I'm getting at here is that this whole approach has been handled so poorly. It's not really fair for long-time fans who are invested in the original characters. It's not fair on the new characters because they're not getting a real chance to be themselves. They're basically just replacements for the established characters. And it's also not fair on the new fans who come in reading the stories of Jane Foster, Kamala Khan, Sam Wilson, Miles Morales, because the status quo will be restored eventually, and what's going to become of those characters? They might be retained, they might not. So really, this whole approach doesn't benefit anyone. All it really does is alienate the old fans, make those fans targets for these horrendous character assassination think pieces, and effectively turns the old fans and new fans into rival factions because they both want different things. It's a lack of foresight, a lack of attempt to make this whole thing make sense in universe, and the use of an approach that feels really disrespectful to this universe that is really what is killing Marvel, at least from the perspective of this fan who is also an outsider. And let's all just admit that A-Force, the all-female Avengers team, is not a step towards equality on account of the fact that if you inverted this and did an all-male team, people would not accept that. It's funny how double standards work, isn't it?